a British vacuum cleaner salesman in pre-revolutionary Cuba, in order to support his daughter's expensive lifestyle, takes financial advantage of an offer by British Secret Service to act as a spy, and fabricates false intelligence reports for money. But will he be able to escape the consequences when reality starts to imitate his lies? This is the premise of the 1959 dramatic comedy Our Man in Havana. And that's what we're excavating today on Movie Bones. Hello, folks, and welcome to the Alec Guinness Retrospective Podcast. I mean, we're only 16 episodes into the show, and we've already managed to feature 3 of Alec Guinness's films, so I won't hold it against any of you out there if you start to think we're in the tank for his films. But we're not, because in fact, part of the reason I wanted to put this one up there so quickly after The Father Brown is because we were going to do this one earlier in the series, except that Tubi pulled it down before we could. And this is what Tubi does. So just so you guys know out there, Tubi sometimes will mess up our links to the movies. Sometimes they'll come back. But, you know, this is the kind of part of the risk of the game here. So, yeah, that's what happened. That's why we're doing it this week. The film itself features Sir Alec as Jim Wormwold, who's an Englishman living abroad in pre-revolutionary Havana, Cuba, selling vacuum cleaners when he's approached by a British Secret Service agent, Hawthorne, played by Noel Coward, to be the eyes and ears of the organization in Cuba, which is in the middle of a civil war. He accepts because he's the single father of a daughter with expensive hobbies, and he's looking for a way to make some more money so he can support that. But it's when his new employers start demanding results, his friend, who's a German expat named Dr. Hasselbacher, played by Burl Ives, encourages him to simply fabricate information, which he does by sending his own spy artwork of secret projects that just so happen to look a lot like his vacuum cleaners. This gets him lots and lots of unwanted attention from the form of a local radio operator and a secretary he eventually becomes close to. Those are sent by the Secret Service people who think that he needs them to keep doing good work. And things are further complicated by a local militant police chief, Segura, played by comedian Ernie Kovacs, who has romantic designs on his daughter, and he begins to suspect something is a little off with the situation. That's a lot of wheels to be moving for a movie around, and I think overall, for me, Ryan, I think this movie moves a lot of those wheels really well. And what do you think?
Well, my first thought is this, and this is wrong to think of it this way and everything, but, you know, since we've already brought up Alec Guinness as the main actor, the main character in this movie, Alec Guinness looks like a middle-aged man who's heavy set for the time, and whatnot. And when a lot of people think Alec Guinness, obviously they think Obi Wan Kenobi. And my very first thought when I saw him in this movie, I was like, hey, he actually looks like Obi Wan Kenobi finally. He does.
Yeah. I think it takes about, I mean, the other movies we saw, I think were from the 40s, I think. I can't remember for sure. Because I'm not looking at it right now.
They were all earlier than this movie.
It's just before Castro is taking over.
Yeah, and it was really, I'm not going to sit here and say or pretend that I know a lot about the Cuban Revolution. It's a historical marker in and of itself because the film does tell you right away that this was filmed before the revolution was in full effect or the revolution came to an end. But it does tell you that. So it's like, again, and we talked about this. I don't think we haven't done Casablanca, have we?
No, we haven't.
We've talked about Casablanca before.
We have talked a little bit.
We've talked about it in these in these other ways.
In relationship to other films we've been watching, yeah.
It's really neat to see a world that is going to fundamentally change before it fundamentally changes. And that's what you see in this movie. And that's one of the most endearing things about this movie because it does not shy away from the reality of the revolution. It maybe doesn't like make it the forefront, but it's there because the movie tells you it's there, and not just in the beginning. It tells you throughout the movie.
Oh yeah, the movie accurately makes you feel like you can feel the culture it's around it and the events going on. You don't see like the actual. It's not a war film. It's more spycraft than anything else. But the way they do something else interesting with it, with the whole theme of the whole thing of going on with the revolution. What they do with it is they don't give names to the sides. So that, and because I think that what would happen is if you did that, I think it would kind of take you out of it in terms of it would put a political face on everything, and you'd be tempted to retreat to your whatever your political priors are. And I'm not saying, look, Ryan and I have said this before. We're not communists.
No, yeah, we are 100% not
communists. Okay,
yeah.
But it's good to be able to take yourself and get that little bit of distance from an event, just enough so that you can still refocus on the characters and actually the human drama that's going on here. Because that's, for me, the human kind of drama that's going on between Alec Guinness and especially him and Hasselbacher. Between Wormold and Hasselbacher, that to me was like, for me, one of the hearts of the film in terms of it that drove things along. And I don't know about you. What it was? Did you feel the same way?
Yeah. I do have one other little kind of tidbit of information here. I think it was Maureen O'Hara. I think that's how you say her name. I saw a little blurb from her that I want to say it was. I can't say his last name. I've always butchered it my whole entire life. But Shay. The guy that, I think it's Che
Guevara?
One of the revolution. Yeah, Guevara.
Che Guevara.
I think it was him. He was actually, like, on set quite a bit during the filming of this movie.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like, she got to know him.
Oh, wow. Because, and here's this guy, he's known for his kind of, like, his bloodthirsty reputation, He's kind of he's not known for his good works, put it that way. To be just hanging around a film set in Cuba, it just feels really weird, So let's talk about the actors a bit. What did you find were like some of the strengths of the movie in terms of acting?
Okay, so I think my two favorite characters in the movie were Jim, which is played by Alec Guinness's character, and Dr. Hasselbacher, which is Burl Ives' character. You have Jim, who is, in a way, he's trying to be very... I don't know, maybe carefree is not the right word, but he's trying to live a life in which, the other film we watched, Lavender Hill Mob, where he's trying to get ahead, where he's trying to have he's just trying to make money. That's a lot of his character. Now, he is devious, or we've already talked about the devious part of it, what he's doing, but I think it's a fair thing that, and we can get in that into a little bit. He's not like an incredibly selfish guy. In fact, you could call him selfless because he's just trying to make his daughter happy, for the most part and everything. But he, that drive just keeps pushing him forward and forward. I really enjoy the character work from that. I wouldn't call it necessarily character growth, but there is character growth. And he does he meets every single, and I'm talking about Alec Guinness now, not the character Jim, but he meets every single challenge with the appropriate emotion for that. And it really does pull you in.
He has this very kind of effortless charm. It's a very casual, laid back kind of way of acting that it's not lazy, but it's very casual. It's laid back, and it's always, and even no matter what's going on, even if something's not going his way, he can keep it under wraps. Alec Guinness is effortlessly calm. He's kind of unflappable in some ways. And I think that's one of the great strengths of the film. It's unlike Lavender Hill Mob, where he's very particular. We noted about that in the film. So he's able to do these twists and variations on similar characters because, like I said, like Brian said, there are similarities here. But there are also these really nice little variations, and his very relaxed demeanor here, for me, that was great. And as you said, his relationship with Burl Ives Hasselbacher, who is this German expat guy, and they're both kind of cynical men, and that kind of gets them into trouble essentially because it's Hasselbacher who, when he learns that Wormold is come onto this thing, has been approached by British Secret Service. Well, why don't you just go ahead and give it, just make up stuff. All this spy stuff is just silly, and all this politics and political stuff, these stuff back and forth, it's all just silly stuff anyway.
And there's a reason behind that, as you're watching the movie, and the reason is they left their countries of origins pretty much because they didn't want to deal with the politics. They wanted to just make their money. And it's very important to note that when you're watching the film, good audience, because, Dr. Hasselbacher is German. He is German. And it is brought up during the film, the fact that he is German. And when it's brought up, he makes it very clear, I'm not World War II German.
Mm-hmm. No.
I'm World War I German.
He's got the helmet with the spike on it to prove it too.
Yeah. And you can see, and that's the thing, maybe I missed something when I was watching the film, but I felt like there's a lot more mystery to Dr. Hasselbacher's character that we maybe did not get a chance for a reveal at.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
it
agree.
left me, I really enjoyed his character.
I really
enjoyed it. He made the film, one of my critiques about that is I wish he was in the film more. Because they played off each other so well. And a lot of these type of action, comedy type spy movies, there is a formula to it. The formula usually is leading man, leading woman. And that's perfectly fine. But, and I liked Maureen O'Hare's character, Beatrice, but I don't know, when they brought her in, other characters got less screen time, and it left me wanting more of a lot of those other characters. That also being said, I understand Alec Guinness's character's motivation. I don't want to say this the wrong way, but, his daughter, I was like, there you are.
Oh, yeah. She's kind of she's very superficial. She's not totally superficial. She's a string character. She's not meant to have a lot of depth because she's further away and further removed. She only needs to be there as a reason for Wormold to be motivated to to understand at least enough why Wormold would want to please her, because she's an innocent, she's a little naive, Getting back to Hasselbacher for just a moment, there's a line he has in there. To me, it kind of hints at the theme of the movie. He says, "It takes no skill to kill a man, but to save a man takes 6 years training, and even then one cannot be sure." And it's that setting in of the gravity of what they're actually getting involved in. He has this very kind of, very kind of, whatever, kind of careless, but living the good life. He goes to the bar every day. So to see him suddenly go pale, at the turn of events, underneath there's actually consequences for a lot of this stuff. We can't just simply pass it off. We can't just totally dismiss it all as just politics, because somebody's taking this stuff seriously. And to the degree that they do, it is important to remember that there are actually real consequences for politics. So that I thought was interesting. Did you get a little bit upset about the dog?
I will always get upset about when they take out animals in a movie.
I know it gets me every time. I couldn't even see John Wick, just knowing, having seen the first trailer. I just can't watch it. For those pet owners out there is who really are close to your pets, and dogs in particular. There is a scene where a dog gets injured, or we don't know if he's dead or not, but presumably that was the intent. Because it has to do with, and it is plot related. It's not frivolously done. It's related to the plot. There's a checkers game in this movie, and it's got to be one of the best checkers games in film I think I've ever seen. Wormold ends up playing a game of checkers with Segura for stakes that are personal, but they play it with bottles of those little airline bottles of whiskey and bourbon, and one set's clear, the other one's dark. And whoever loses a piece, they have to drink it essentially. So it almost has this perverse incentive to win, and yet not win too boldly. That really was. I love that scene too. It's strange because it is a comedy on the face of it. It's billed as a comedy, but I would put it as a dramatic comedy. Wouldn't you? It would.
It's more. To me, it's more in line with an action. Well, I would say action. Like if it was made today, there'd be a lot more action in this movie. It's a spy thriller. There are some comedic elements. Clearly, and a lot of it's in the dialogue. A lot of it's in the character work by, characters like Captain Segura. You could maybe argue, I would not argue this personally, just because of what little or what bits we do learn about him. At first you can maybe argue that Dr. Hasselbacher is a comedic character. I didn't see him as a comedic character and everything. And then just like the amount of times, because there's actually quite a few times in this movie where Alec Guinness's character is, the best term would just be just outright drunk. And everything. Now, you could argue that it's not like super drunk, but I mean, he's knocked back quite a few. And there's like 3 or 4 scenes. Also, too, I do have a couple critiques of this movie. We're not going to get into it yet, but like how they did some of their quote unquote spy stuff was comedic. Like, turn the faucet on.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not the only thing that's going to just keep you hidden and everything.
And I have a point about that scene. They do tend to more broadly do slightly more broad comedy when it comes to the people up in the, up in the higher ups in the British Secret Service that are hiring him. There's a lot of kind of, kind of shenanigans, and it isn't quite there, in terms of the same tone as the rest of the film, because, whenever you're still located in Cuba, in the settings there, and you're not going back to England to see what they're talking about, it tends to be, that's the heart of the film. I mean, and the parts that don't, it's not enough for me to take away my enjoyment of the film. But the bathroom scene, because here's this guy, this British Secret Service guy. He's in the process of recruiting Wormwold, and he says, "Come with me to the bathroom, so we can have a conversation in private." First of all, guys do not have conversations in the bathroom. If you hear anything going on in the bathroom in a men's room, but conversation-wise, that kind of already kind of raises an ears. Like, that's unusual. Men go into the bathroom and we just zip it up. Yeah, I mean, my experience is not. Yeah, right. This is.
I would say like you're gonna either zip it up or you're talking about your present situation. So like, for instance, and when I say present situation, I'm not talking like, hey, I want to go to the bathroom and talk to you about this particular thing. For most guys, it's like, I'm going to the bathroom, and then you got another guy, it's like, you know what, I got to go to the bathroom too. And so like, that'll be the only reason why I go to the bathroom with my friends or the people I'm with, is because it's like, yeah, I could use the bathroom as well at this point. And then
it's
like,
all business, typically.
Yeah, it's business, or you're talking about like, for me, most of the time with the people that I'm with, it's either a specific work event or it's a sporting event. And so, like, I might be talking about the game. I might be talking about what's going on. But it's nothing like, hey, I need to talk to you in the bathroom about this very important thing that's happening right now, or this important thing that I want you to do. And I was always thinking, like, why didn't you just, like, nobody knows who this dude is.
No.
You could just, like, you could have just told him to come to your house from the get-go, like, hey, meet me here in this place at this time.
Because if you had a place that was already like, you knew it was bug-free, there was no chance of someone to overhear you, it was private. That seems to be like the thing you would want to try to do.
I have an issue. I want to get to my critique real quick. I have an issue with the in-world premise of this movie.
Is it related to the vacuum cleaner?
Well, it's not related to the vacuum cleaner. And when I say in-world premise, I'm not talking about the story itself. I'm talking about the decisions made by the characters. I kept thinking, this is the dumbest way to recruit someone to an intelligence agency that I've ever personally seen, ever. Like, that's my big critique of the movie, is I think that the British intelligence was dumb. Because, like, I don't think they barely did their due diligence on his character.
No background checks.
And then it's like, it's just this guy who sells vacuum cleaners.
Seriously. That's it.
And he's the most, and the thing is too, he's the most obvious person. You know why he's the most obvious person? Because he's British.
Yes. Exactly. And that's almost the reason why he goes to him. It's like, oh, a familiar face. That's it. It leans into that side of the humor that I was talking about earlier. It's just more broad. Alec Guinness's performance brings it back to where you want it to be, because his presence is enough to keep you invested even in those scenes.
Kind of another comedic element to it is like, talking about you have this British spy and the, Captain Segura and his men were immediately like, we're suspicious of him.
It's like, follow that guy. It's not hard.
Yeah, follow that guy. He is suspicious. Our suspicions have been raised. But, and also I gotta say this too. Now this is just on me. Like when they started giving everyone code names, I paused the film and I went and looked it up. I was like, I had to make sure this wasn't like tied to the James Bond films, like at all. Because like when they started saying 00, I mean I know these are MI6. Like actual code words or code names and whatnot.
The letter identification, the number identification system. Yeah.
But I had to make sure. I was like, this isn't like somehow tied to James Bond, is it? Because that'd have been kind of cool. And when I say James Bond, I'm talking about the books. It's not connected. So it was just me, putting two things together because they sounded familiar and whatnot.
So what do you give this film, Ryan? We're going to come down on this one.
All right. It's well acted. It does have some comedic elements to it. It's a historical film in its own way. And I do like that. I'm going to give this movie its flowers. And I'm going to give it a Fortune and Glory.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. I can't disagree with you, man. I think it's a great choice. It's a good choice. I didn't come down quite as high. I think Alec Guinness, I've heard that Alec Guinness, and when he's talked about this film before, was reportedly, him and I think the writer or one of the other people behind the scenes was not happy with the final result. But you know what? I think he's wrong. I mean, it's a really good film. The acting alone, like you said, between Ives and Guinness, that's worth the price of admission all on its own. You've got Ernie Kovacs, which I really like. If you ever, by the way, folks, if you don't know who Ernie Kovacs is, and you see him in this movie for the first time, what he did outside of this is so different than anything he does inside this film. His humor, his comedy, was kind of like one of those out of the box, mind-bending, surreal types. But I love his work there. I can easily see myself sitting down to watch this, several times in the future. Is it enough to buy a physical copy for me and have it in a cased copy? Maybe not quite that much, but this is definitely a trust me film.
And see, like that's my thing is like. There are story elements that I would personally like to tweak a little bit of it. I could see them remaking this movie, to be honest with you, and I probably would go watch it. But I'm just a sucker for a world that is going to change. Like you get to see, and this is what I've said before about, I've said this before about Casablanca, the world that the people at the time, they don't know how much the world's about to change. And it's filmed in Cuba. So, you've got actual people there. So it's like, again, they don't know, like a lot of them might not realize, they might suspect something, but they don't see how much it's going to change. And when that kind of stuff happens, whether it's good or bad, we get a glimpse into actual history. We don't get that a lot. And so like that kind of stuff it's always got me. It always gets to me in a good way. I'm not saying it's a good history, but it gets to me in a good way. So that's why I have to give the film its flowers and give it a Fortune and Glory because of that, because it is a literal, even if we don't talk about this movie a lot in the grand scheme of the discourse, it is a movie that shows us a still image of history before it radically changes.
Yeah. And like I said, you can feel it in the film.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's our show for this week's folks. If you're just tuning in for the first time, welcome aboard. We're always glad to have more company on the journey. Don't forget to follow along in your favorite podcast of choice. And with that, next week's film assignment, Ryan, you know what the next week's film assignment is?
Let me look in this real quick. Our next week's film assignment is The Night of the Hunter, starring Robert Mitchum, Shelley Winters, Lillian Gish.
Anyway, that's what we're going to be looking forward to next week. So watch it alongside us if you feel like it. And until then, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.